So I just want to give a few quick thoughts on the AFC and NFC Championship games. Kansas City, of course, beating Baltimore 17-10 earlier today in the AFC title game. For me, really looking at both conference title games, obviously the Niners just beating Detroit 34-31 in the NFC title game, it felt like the teams with the experience, the moment didn't get too big for them even when adversity struck. Whereas I hate to call Baltimore an upstart, but they're not used to in the Lamar Jackson era. They have never gotten this far in the playoffs until now. Their first AFC title game appearance with Lamar as their quarterback, and obviously Detroit. It's been 30-some years since they've gotten this far in the playoffs. It felt like the teams with the experience that have been there, Kansas City defending Super Bowl champs, fourth Super Bowl appearance in 5 years. The Niners, they've played in 3 straight NFC title games and now 4 out of 5. And they're going back to the Super Bowl for the second time in 5 seasons, where they're going to rematch the Chiefs in Super Bowl 54. Or from when they played Super Bowl 54 now, of course, Super Bowl 58 coming up in Vegas. But I just felt like the upstart, quote-unquote, teams, the moment got too big for them. Looking at Baltimore, for instance, very disciplined team, didn't make a whole lot of mistakes. They won all these big games, regular season, postseason, beat, I think, 11 teams with a winning record throughout the year, blew out a lot of them. And it just felt like Baltimore, just with so many uncharacteristic mistakes. Some of these penalties, these personal fouls, obvious personal fouls. Zay Flowers did a lot of great things in this game, but he also did a lot of stupid things with the taunting, lost fumble at the 1-yard line. Lamar Jackson, the interception in the end zone. So, when you play Kansas City, it's kind of like the Brady and Belichick Patriots, where, especially in the playoffs, there's very little margin for error. Anytime you get an opportunity, anytime they leave the door even slightly open, you got to take full advantage. And if you make even one critical mistake, but especially multiple critical mistakes, it's going to come back to bite you. And that's how it is with the Chiefs, with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid now. So I just felt like Baltimore, they had a lot of chances in the second half of that game. Shut Kansas City out in the second half, and it didn't matter. And the thing is, Lamar's obviously a very good quarterback, but I've never been a Lamar guy because I still feel, even with some of the improvements he's made as a passer over the years, he's still too much of an athlete playing quarterback at times. He's still not great from the pocket. You still don't really trust him throwing the ball a lot. He's 2-4 in the playoffs now, and teams in the past, they've forced him to really step up in the pocket and throw the ball, and that's been kind of the blueprint to beat him in the postseason. And here's another game where he didn't really play that great from the pocket, held the ball too long, was trying to stand back there. And Baltimore, I don't understand why they were constantly trying to get aggressive and throw downfield when it's like, try to get like the 8, 10, 15-yard throws down the field. So Baltimore, they just had a lot of opportunities, and they just kept making mistake after mistake after mistake, and you're not going to beat Kansas City that way. And at the same time, looking at the Detroit-San Francisco game, Detroit up 24-7 at the half, blew a 17-point lead. The Niners took not even a full, about 10 minutes into the third quarter, I think, is when they finally tied it at 24. Then they ended up going up 27-24. Detroit, they went for it on fourth down a couple times. Had an opportunity to tie it with a 48-yard field goal. I think there was 5 or 6 minutes left, I believe, at that point. Maybe 7. But anyways, they pass up the field goal. Another makeable throw. And a second time on fourth down, they don't get it. And then the Niners drive right down the field. 3 minutes left. They go up 34-24 with the touchdown. And that was pretty much all she wrote. So Detroit, look, that's what got you there with Dan Campbell being aggressive. But you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And I thought there were just too many times they got a little too aggressive. could have played a little more conservatively at times, and could have tried, kicking field goals at certain point. Because when you give up 20 unanswered, and actually ended up being 27 unanswered ultimately before Detroit finally scored. But when you give up at 20 unanswered, down 27-24, more than halfway through the fourth quarter, and you have an opportunity to kick a 48-yarder, good weather conditions, tie the game, it gets some momentum back on your side. So I get the aggressiveness. It's what you got. What got you there. Dan Campbell's a hell of a coach, just won Coach of the Year, but I just felt like in that situation they should have kicked the field goal. And I think that really, more so than all the points before that the 49ers scored, really changed the game. And the Super Bowl itself, like I said, this will be the second time now, dating back 4 years ago, that the Niners and the Chiefs will be playing in the Super Bowl. And they'll be playing in Vegas, obviously. Raiders are one of the Chiefs' rivals, so, they're used to playing in that stadium once a year. And the 49ers, of course, used to be Bay Area rivals with the Raiders before the Raiders, of course, moved to Vegas, unfortunately. But it's kind of interesting because from a travel standpoint, you don't have one fan base that has to travel across the country or anything like that. I mean, it's a pretty central location, ideal weather, going to be a lot to do there. Should be a fun Super Bowl, and eventually I'll try to preview that game. But great conference championship games, conference championship weekend for the most part never disappoints. But ultimately, just to sum it up, the teams that have been there, that have been in this position deep in the playoffs year in and year out, they didn't blink. The adversity, the moment didn't get too big for them. The moment got way too big for Baltimore. The moment certainly got big for Detroit, and that was a difference in these games.